Hello, you're watching Black Comics Universe, streaming here exclusively on The Experience. I'm your host, Imani Lateef. Please help us out by hitting share and giving us a like and follow. Then make sure to tune in for our original programming 7 days a week. The Black Comics Universe streams every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern on all DSPs. That's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And today I am joined by none other than my brother, Yusuf Lateef. What's up, man?
What's going on, man?
All right.
Good to be here.
Yep. So anybody who knows us knows that we're sort of like mirror images of each other. I'm the older brother, but we're both artists. I'm a graphic designer. My brother Yusuf here is a fine artist and muralist and an art educator, art teacher. Work here in Toledo, Ohio at the Toledo School for the Arts. Tell us a little bit about your artistic journey, like what type of mediums you're into.
I think like a lot of kids, like us, we started with drawing.
Mm-hmm.
It was like we drew all the time. So and then those were the tools that were like closest to us.
Right.
And then of course you get into like junior high school, and then they start throwing like paint at you and like clay and so early on I got into a program called Young Artists at Work, and I was in the mural program there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first rollout of the program, and it was very impactful.
Okay.
Super impactful for me. And I think at that point, at that moment, I knew, I wanted a career in the arts, some way. And then that same summer, I went to a NAACP ACTSO competition.
Right.
And it was a national competition. We competed locally, and I was fortunate to be able to go into the nationals. And I saw so many ranges of skill, and that was the thing that kind of seared it for me.
Right.
It was like other kids looked like me from all over the country and really doing like really powerful, sophisticated work. And that kind of really propelled me and pushed me. So that's kind of like how things kind of started. But I will have to say, I got to give thanks to our parents who saved our drawings,
right,
who encouraged us, sent you to Saturday school in Columbus. I was jealous, so that kind of
the museum.
Yeah, that's
CCAD. That's College of Art Design and Columbus.
That sparked. I was jealous. So I was like, well,
I never thought of it like that.
Yeah. And
no, because it's interesting because when we were growing up, I was the artist first, kind of, and then you followed in my footsteps.
Yeah.
But I was more into cartoons and comic books.
Yeah.
And somewhere in there, that kind of diverged. Like I was more into technical art, as far as computers and stuff like that. And you sort of veered off into fine art.
Yeah.
What was it? And now I'm learning but I can definitely see how y'all was such a huge impact, because that's when it wasn't just you didn't just get into murals. That's when you met Aaron. That's when you started getting into graffiti art.
Right.
Right. You met Dustin there too, I think.
Sure did. Yeah.
Dustin Hosteller from Toledo, Ohio. So I can definitely see how that sort of diverged. That's how kind of our paths sort of broke off. Like, what else was it about fine arts that drew you to that, while I was sort of like drawn into more of like storytelling kind of?
So you had mentioned Columbus College of Art and Design, and back then it was very, it was like, well, I call it the art boot camp, and a large amount of the freshman class didn't come back after Christmas break because of the workload was so much.
Right.
And it kind of pushed you into like, what are you going to do? And my thing was illustration. I was going to go into illustration, maybe medical illustration and whatnot.
Yeah, mine was always pushing that.
Yeah.
I almost feel bad if we never got into that.
Right. And so after my freshman year, my professors, they were like, well, you have really good painting abilities. And a lot of my friends that I was hanging out with were in the fine arts major. So they convinced me to switch majors. And they said, hey, you can illustrate and be a fine arts major too. You can do all of those things under the umbrella of fine art. You don't have to like go that route. So I switched my major and everything got really small. My class size got really small. You had a more intense, closer relationship with the professors there. And the rigor was still the same. And then I went to New York. So that was like, these little stepping stones that happened for me.
Right. It's always seemed like more than I did, you definitely got to experience like these sort of like culture clashes when it comes to the arts. That's like going to art school. I didn't go to art school. I went to a traditional school.
Yeah.
College. I went to UT. You went to CCAD. Then you went to New York. Then it's like, so can you like sort of expound on that whole journey as an artist?
Yeah. So it's funny. If you were to go, I guess there's going to be a long answer to it.
Yeah.
But say, for instance, they found a new planet and they were like, all right, we can take like so many people. We got to take a civil engineer. We got to take like biologists. We got to take, certain people. And I asked my students this, like, should we take, what about an artist? And no one ever lists the artist,
Right.
And I'm like, well, you gotta look at this, if everyone is like approaching their skill or their particular training from the standpoint of an artist and use the creative process and marrying that with critical thinking, like you're gonna get somewhere. You're gonna be able to innovate and really develop, new ideas. So I think my pathway and my idea of art, is really evolving, going through that, that rigor and thinking about work ethic. But now with pairing that with being an educator, I'm not just teaching kids who want to go into the art field. I'm teaching kids and adults who just want to understand, the creative process and like art making. And so I have to kind of find a way to communicate these ideas in a way where they can take it and bring it back to their own school of thought,
Right.
I don't even know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it's a part of the journey, right?
Yeah.
Because I think typically when we think of artists, we think of these, we think of someone who's reclusive.
Yeah.
Someone who's like, to themselves. It's like they're all about what they want to say and their message and their work. It's not about, other people getting it or, understanding it. It's really about, their message and their success and all this kind of stuff. And I think for any artist, I would encourage any artist to put themselves in a position where they have to not just explain it, but to teach it in a way that empowers students and also helps them to understand how to deliver their message in art. It's definitely a humbling experience. And you see that as an artist that you have a much broader role to play in society than that whole small isolationist type of, typical vibe that comes off that people, it's more stereotypical than anything.
Yeah, like, so I remember me and my wife, we did this thing. I guess it's, you're identifying what kind of person you are. Like, there's this little thing. Like, I think and I might be wrong, INFP or something like that. Like, I'm an extrovert. and an introvert.
Yeah.
So like I'm comfortable by myself,
Mm.
but like comfortable being in social situations, right?
Yeah.
Whereas my wife is like total introvert,
Right.
like don't, she doesn't like to be social. But I think what happens is I have a private practice, like where, it's just my work, it's what I'm doing. I rarely try to explain it, you know what I mean? And then there's a social practice where you're trying to engage with people and you want to share the process, and you don't want it to be so over the top where people can't enter into this idea of the arts,
Right.
because I don't want this idea where it's elitist or lofty, like. But then at the same time, you got this idea of like, well, everything is art and everybody's an artist. It's not that either.
Right.
It's an awareness. But I think there's a way to marry these two types of artists. These two types of people, I think are important, and I think there's a lot that needs to be put back on the audience, right? Like,
as a responsibility on the audience.
Yeah, it's important to like encourage the audience to use their own imagination and bring their own experience to the work, because then you can share and teach the artist that actually made that work. Because I don't, I'll make something and I might have some type of, it might be in context or something, but I'd rather hear what someone else thought of it first,
right?
Then share mine, because now I'm not leading them into the answer that I want. I get to actually communicate and learn new ideas, something that I had no idea I was doing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like learning something in post, as opposed to being like premeditated with the work, So I live in that place,
right?
But also live and learn through a more planned out, coordinated way of thinking. And that's the teaching component.
I was listening to a Malcolm Gladwell interview, and he explained it as thinking in public.
Yeah.
So he's not. So he doesn't have these. He doesn't make concrete ideas or proclamations.
Yeah.
He presents ideas that have, it gives him enough room for other people to come in, ask questions, add some to it, take something from it. So it's not so set in stone or absolute,
right,
that he can't come back around and do a totally other book that sort of denounces the other one,
right? Yeah,
or questions the other one, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he called it. I like that idea of sort of like thinking in public. It's like even works of art can be, just because, even if they're in a museum, and we're going to be talking about museums later, that doesn't mean that work of art is still a public piece.
Yeah,
we're participating with that work publicly. So we have enough, so as we engage it, we can formulate our own opinions.
Yeah.
They don't always have to be professional opinions and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's leads me to my next question here. My handy dandy notebook. So yeah, like I was saying, like we've diverged, right? So we're not quite on the same path as far as artistically, but I do feel like we are both storytellers, kind of. And so mine can be a little more literal, coming in, with comics and cartoons and stuff like that. As far as a fine artist, how do you approach storytelling with your work?
I think it's built to suit, right? Like wherever I find myself, I try to figure out where I can, where I fit. So, for instance, and big ups to my peeps, the Rasquaches, my friend Federico, and his brother David started this artist residency, and it's all thinking about the work and what's happening on the border, what's happening with our indigenous brothers and sisters, and our Mexican brothers and sisters. And we went to Puebla. They've been going there for about 4 years. I got to go a couple of years ago to Puebla, and it was really a magical, experience, a very meaningful experience. But like, how do I fit? You know what I'm saying? As an African American, like, how do I fit into this story? How do I fit into this? And I think I'm coming from a place of empathy and a place of like understanding struggle, and there's a connecting language involved with that. So when it comes to storytelling, like, I have to come from like, I think I'm coming from one place of I'm coming from a framework of like an African American.
So like you experienced like what a writer experienced, like the whole idea of write what you know.
Yeah.
So you like creating work
from
that aspect. Like,
all I gotta do is be me.
Yeah.
That's it. And as long as I'm me to the best of my ability, people will be able to fill in the blanks. And that's kind of like this idea of putting the onus on the audience. You know what I mean? The artist can't carry all that. I can't carry what you're looking for, what they're looking for. The only thing that you can do is be yourself, and wherever you are, there you are.
Right.
And the one thing that connects us all is that we're human and we're experiencing this world in a very similar way, So, but being aware of that as an artist, or because you're aware, you're an artist.
Repeat that. Because you're aware.
Because you're aware and you react. In that awareness, and produce based on that awareness, and that this kind of idea of woke, or it's one thing being woke, but it's like being awake and then acting on that and producing something and acknowledging a process.
Right.
You're like actively engaging in this human, this idea of being.
Right.
So everyone is being. So wherever you are, you don't have to try to fit in. It's like, if there's anything that African Americans bring to the table, it's like, look, we're gonna figure this out.
Right.
Because because we've been cut off, we're like the global orphans. We had to create culture that defined us based on our relationship with land and place. And if you look at us, we are a microcosm of everyone else's experience.
Right.
So I think that's one of our gifts, is that, and it's a tool. But at the end of the day, I'm an artist because I'm aware.
And I like that, because that reminds me of this. It's a quote from a movie, but he was quoting another poet. The White Tiger. It's like a movie on. And I just finished reading a book, right? And in the book, the main character quotes this poet, and the poet explains that he was talking about, these poor people, and that they were slaves. But the issue was they didn't know, because they were slaves because they didn't see the beauty, beauty in the world. If they could see the beauty in their environment, they would realize that they were slaves.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuck with me, that idea. And another thing that you say all the time, and which has been a really strong issue lately, was that just by being Black, right? The moment that is introduced into art,
Yeah.
it automatically becomes political.
Right.
Um, it's almost, it reminds me of that Honorable Elijah quote when he talks about, he took that, if you ever seen the movie, remember he took that glass of water
And he put the black ink.
He dropped that one put that one drop of ink
right.
in that water.
Right.
And it turned everything black.
Right.
It almost feels like that. It's like, do you feel that sometimes as far as the work that you create?
You could take that same scene and then put 2016 at the top.
Yeah.
Because like everybody turned black in 2016. And like everybody was black. You know what I mean? Everybody started to see the physicality of the black experience.
Okay.
Because our political system was like turned on its head, you know? And whether you were for it or against it, it was still all up at the surface. Like
right,
the elephant in the room became apparent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that and that's something to be aware of, but it's not something that should always lead the conversation.
Okay.
Because what happens is you'll end up into a kind of nationalist type of kind of frame. You know what I mean? So you got to be careful, acknowledge it and use it, and it's just another component to the whole thing. But I think that I can see that. It's up to me, and hopefully seeing that and understanding that, like saying these words, is my responsibility to produce something and make something or create something or an opportunity that kind of speaks to that.
Right.
But I think that one of the beautiful things for me being an artist has given me kind of like that mental, spiritual space to actually think about that stuff and like conceptualize it and make something physical or produce something that maybe speaks to that.
Right.
And I, just always kind of coming back to, the artist's journey, I think that, we used to do this all the time, like go to movies and just break the movie down as kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that was, again, this creative, having a supportive family and being able to think, it's kind of like Malcolm can sit in a room and draw and think, but he's drawing, but he's thinking at the same time. He's like figuring stuff out, know? It's a picture of a superhero, but that is not just a picture of a superhero, know? This kid,
he definitely put in his 10,000 hours.
So
they saying you got coming to the scoot over.
Yep.
Pretend like you've been here before. Been on television before. You know what I'm saying? All right, stop laughing. Look serious. All right, no, for real. So, on that note, pull up the MLK image, Kyle. So I like the way you approach it. Sort of like, like to be aware that it's happening and know when to engage and when to pull. I guess know when to turn up the heat on it.
Yeah.
And then turn it down.
Yeah.
So how do you know, like for instance, this image you're pulling up, like explain like the process of that, or like in it, or I guess like, so I guess that would be like on the far end, on a political, as far as political imagery, right?
Yeah. So this is my, this is me, like
you do a lot of collages like this a lot.
Yeah, and I like collage a lot. It allows me to kind of get thoughts out quickly. But this particular image is me kind of clapping at capitalism. And this marriage of art and capitalism, which for me is can be problematic and touchy, and then coming at it from an African American experience and then growing up in a house where our father is very, our parents, I should say, are very, they're activists in their own right, just being themselves. And the work that they did and do. I could, for some reason, I couldn't put my finger on it, but I was like, I can't stand Martin Luther King Day.
The commercialization of it.
Yeah, like I remember it was some job, we were cleaning inside of the school. We were like janitors or something like that for a moment. We had like a janitorial contract.
Oh, you had a janitor's contract. Yeah, I remember.
And on the walls, it was these Black History Month posters of these notable Black folks in history. And I was like, these are cool. And they were like really nice painted illustrations of these portraits. And then right in the corner, I was like, sponsored by Budweiser. And I'm like, we're in a school.
Right. Oh,
Black History Month, the posters, and then there's the Budweiser beer symbol on the poster.
Right.
Like in the school.
Well, you know what I mean? So like, weird about
that's a problem. So like that image you got like and McDonald's is good at it, man. They're like really good. They were like one of the first folks that like really started to put Black folks at the forefront in their commercials. You know, remember the one commercial? It'd be great if Kyle could pull this up, man. I don't know how quick you can work it, but like this old school commercial about Jimmy, you know, getting a job at McDonald's.
Yeah, he started off in a job. And,
I don't know.
Dave Chappelle did a parody of it. Like he went and got it. Then he got moved up to a manager. It's like, oh, he about to get. Oh, I heard you about to get your stove. Like he about to, like, you know, the whole neighborhood thought he just owned a McDonald's all of a sudden.
Yeah,
which wasn't the case. But it's like, but you know what I realized too. I think we're kind of stuck with it because we live in a capitalist country.
They're gonna do what they're gonna do. You know, this is me right now at 44 coming to some resolve, understanding like they are going to do what they're going to do. And it's our responsibility to do what we gotta do.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And that's the reality of it. You know, I'm not gonna try to steer your boat and try to change the course of your boat, and your boat's been on course for like eons. You know, now I'm gonna do a Noah, and I'm gonna like build my own boat. You know, people call you crazy when you start building your own thing, and this is not just me thinking. This is me working in a community-minded kind of way. This is other people's voices that are like kind of echoing for me. You know what I mean? It's not just me. And that's that, you know, that publicly engaged component. You know, you start to like grow as an individual, but because you're engaging with people.
Right.
So it kind of helps kind of create and make your ideas that much more vibrant. And that's the only reason why, at least my ideas, or at least I have the opportunity to like put my ideas out here in a public way, is because, you know, there's other people in the background kind of helping this along, you know. But anyway, that collage was very easy for me to make. I was like, oh, McDonald's sugar packet. I got this picture of MLK. You know, you put them together and there's this juxtaposition that happens, and then it's like you put it out there and it's like, all right, now let's have a conversation about this, you know.
And ironically, the item that's being replaced is what, the Bible? Possibly? Like what was originally in his hand?
I don't know. I can't remember what.
Oh, snap. Oh, wait. Pull it up.
He found a commercial.
Yeah. No, but
I think that it's being aware, so now you're aware of it, and see that's material for an artist or like a comedian or anybody. That's material you can use. You can just play with that stuff all day. For instance, like an MC, if they're like freestyling, like you know, I think the MCs that are the best are the most well-read MCs. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because they just have words, or you know, they ask people in the audience to like throw up a word or something like that. It's like that makes the job of coming up with the next rhyme that much more easy. It's just
Right.
like content after content,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff to use. But I you know, that's thinking of art practice in a way that now, you know, it's not the material, it's not painting necessarily, it's not ceramics, but it's the principles behind those materials.
Mm.
It's not, it doesn't end at the physical paint, latex, and all this other stuff. It's more so the driving factor is the idea.
I see that a lot. I do see that because what was interesting was that, and I got this from listening to hip hop. So like, I noticed like, for instance, we idolize Jay-Z and Beyonce, but I tend to idolize them more so as not just artists, but art collectors.
Yeah.
And what I've been noticing that they're doing is that a lot of times now it feels like some of the things that they're doing is more performance art. Yeah, like when like
Solange.
Yeah, even Solange, definitely with Solange, or like Jay-Z did with Magna Carta Holy Grail, where he physically rapped a song in a museum and people traveled, like stood in line to see him perform this quote unquote work of art. And he sold the album to Sony, back to commercialism.
Yeah.
But he sold the album for millions of dollars before he released it. So he actually sold the work as a work of art. He performed it as a work of art. Right. And he got that idea from a famous artist who does for performance art. But now I notice, like, now I look at all their music videos differently. I look at I listen to the music a little bit differently because, or like what Beyonce did with I Am King. It's like that whole music, quote unquote, music video that could have easily been a musical.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's sort of like, and so it's like compounds on itself. It's like, coming from this one single idea. And I like the idea that the foundation, the kernel that it originated from was fine art.
Yes.
We got a question. We have a question from Megan. And it is, I might have to use a little question. What role does art play in the family dynamics? What role does art play in family dynamics?
So that's a good question.
Before you do that, let me reset the room. You're watching Black Comics Universe presented by Peep Comics, exclusively here on The Experience. Please help us by hitting share and giving us a like and follow. And then tune in every week on Tuesdays, 6 p.m. to check out the Black Comics Universe here on The Experience. Follow The Experience on all DSPs at _EXP. All right. What role does art play in family dynamics?
Well, to my homies and peeps out there, actually all the ages, from toddler to newborn to teenager to young adult to adult, I think that as an artist and as an art's family, we have to learn how to be flexible and learn from our own, learn from the lessons, and I think everything is like it's a creative process. You know what I'm saying? It's like you gotta figure it out. Like Naima, my daughter, she'll ask me to tell her a story, and I'm not gonna like.
You gotta perform.
I gotta perform.
All right.
Yeah, see now you're saying something. So like, it is performative. Teaching is performative, and you're in these roles,
right?
And you want those roles to help you communicate the things that you're trying to instill in that child, or the things that you're trying to, communicate to your partner, so that the house is peace. There's peace in the house, and it helps you get into these not lofty ideas, but like it helps you contextualize. Like,
what I realized is that even as an artist, I don't utilize art enough to help resolve or to manage my family as much as I should. Like I think
you might be wrong about that.
Sometimes I think like maybe some of the issues that you might typically find in any family, right? And you would think that as an artist, I will be utilizing art for me to resolve those issues. But I think just like any parent, I'm always looking at, well, there's a more traditional approach to that, or there's a more sacred even approach to that, where it comes to religion and all that kind of stuff comes into play.
Let me give you an example. So like Naima yesterday at school, this little boy said, "I'm smarter than you, and my brother's smarter than me," or something like that. And Naima was like, yeah, kind of agree with him. Like, yeah, you're smarter than me. And me and Rachel were like, well, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Whoa.
You are smart.
Right.
So we do this thing. It's a role play. So we've done this before with her. She knows this. So like I play the little boy. She plays her, or vice versa. So first she's the little boy. She goes, "I'm smarter than you." And I tell her, I say, "I am smart and you are smart, and that's that." And I reverse it. I say, "Okay, now you're Naima and I'm the little boy." And I just play it up. I'm like, "I'm smarter than you, blah, blah, blah." And she's like, "No, you're smart and I'm smart, and that's that." And little kids, they want to repeat that stuff. So she's like, "Let's do it again. So now she goes to school. This kid comes up to her and says that. And she's like, "Oh, wait, I know how to deal with this. We did this at home. We practiced. It's theater."
Yeah, it's theater.
And it's like, I forget the name of it, what it's called. And I was taking a class in grad school about this, But Black folks do this all the time. You know how we get in these heated conversations? And I'm mad at somebody. It's not you, but I'm mad at this person.
Right.
But I talk to you as if you're that person.
Right.
So if anybody comes up on a conversation, they think I'm
let me have it. Right.
Yeah. It's so theatrical. But But I think that's one of the things that, all cultures do it in different ways, but it's very performative, and that's there's a process to that. So if there's a process and then you're producing some type of result, therein lies the arts.
What's interesting is that, and then bringing it, because that's a great point, and bringing it back to what we're talking about as far as politics, it occurred to me because you were also doing a lot of, at one time you were doing some more performative art pieces. That was a part of your, when you got your master's. And it occurred to me, speaking of politics, that what Dr. King was actually doing in civil rights was actually performance art.
Yeah.
And all the roles had to be played in order for the piece to work.
Right.
And Selma is a perfect example. Selma worked because you had a Bull Connor, and he had to play. Dr. King had to play, and his advocates had to play their role. He had to play his role.
Yeah. John Lewis.
The horrific thing that he did.
Yeah.
He had to do his part, because they went to a town just before that.
Yeah.
And the heroes there didn't play their part, or the villain didn't play his role.
Right.
He didn't engage. He didn't arrest anybody. He didn't do any sort of violence towards them. And for that reason, he had to move on because there was the art piece, the performance did not go off as planned.
Mm-hmm.
He had to have all these roles in place. So now, with that perspective, I have a totally different appreciation for everything that he did because they did rehearse.
Yeah.
Those students, Southern Literature, those SNCC and Southern Literature Leadership Conference, they rehearsed.
Yeah.
Those sit-ins were not; those were performances.
Right.
And when you look at them as performances, and they had the biggest stage ever through the media, you know.
To tie into like comics and, you know, it's this speculative nature of Blackness or the performative nature of Blackness that gets on you. You know what I mean? Yeah. And crosses cultures, crosses continents, you know.
We got another question.
Yes.
The other one from Mrs. Megan Davis, my wife. Megan asks, what percentage of art should speak to the true spirit of Black folk? And what percentage is designed to entertain, or are they equally necessary, and why? Let me repeat the question.
Yes.
What was first part? What percentage of art should speak to the true spirit of Black folk?
What percentage of art should speak to the true spirit of Black folk? Well, if you're you and you're 100% you, then whatever you look at, you're going to put it in context to whatever you're experiencing at that moment, or whatever you experienced before, or what you want to or hope to experience in the future. So, you know, as long as you're 100% you, you're going to be able to glean something out of what you experience artistically. I think that it's impossible to ask anything to be able to hold and speak to something 100% across the board, because that person that created that thing is only that person.
Right.
And, you know, the Black experience is very complex and very layered. So I think it would be difficult, if not impossible, to be able to, for any one thing to do that, even any one type of movement to do that, you know?
So how much, where, I guess putting a percentage on it is kind of hard, like giving a number to it, or?
Yeah, there's no way, for me, there's no way to quantify that. It's a completely personal experience.
Because it's sort of like, I do experience that sometimes, like for instance, in comics, I'm a fan of comics in general, but it's interesting that when I approach Black comics, I feel like there tends to be more duty involved than entertainment.
Okay.
You see what I mean? It's sort of like
that's the second question though.
Well, that's what the thing. It's like not so much quantifying it like in a numerical sense, but
yeah.
I do find it is difficult sometimes. Like I'm a huge fan of Static. Milestone Comics just released Static Season 1 just came out. And you could tell in the writing of that book, right? This is a comic book, but in the writing of that book, there was a strong sense of duty to address the current racial tension. Right. So like they there was a Black Lives Matter protest involved in this story, and this kid was dealing with racial issues and stuff like that as a quote unquote superhero or superpower being or whatever. So that sense, you could definitely sense that sense of duty.
Yeah,
is sort of to a degree took priority over, okay, how well was this drawn? How well did this person write the story? How well was this colored even, which is typical conversation when I'm picking up Thor or something like it's like, so
like if you're of the default race,
default race. Okay. Yeah, gotcha.
You can talk about love. You can talk about war. You can talk about all these different things. And race and politics is nowhere around. It's like evil against good. Like blah, blah, blah.
Right.
You get us, and it's like, all right, what's this black man's story? Single mother, raised in the hood, like Black Lives Matter, like all of this stuff becomes like politically charged.
Right.
And you see that. For me, I guess, that's important. And it's entertaining to read. You know what I'm saying? And it's entertaining to read. And I think, right now in this time and however, whenever it's very, I think it's very important to be able to do that and to have that, messaging in there. I think it's like it's seriously needed, especially like as a teacher, to be able to pull something like that and like, hey, read that, check that out.
Right.
Oh man, it's like I can, I'm pretty sure like, parents and families can use these comics to kind of engage with their kids, about the things that are going on in the world. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's important. And I think that's some of the, maybe that's some of the responsibility that's on Black folks to do. You know what I'm saying? That's like the special thing that we can and need to do. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like very particular to our story, as Black folks. And I think
but at the same time, because I know where Megan's coming from, it's like we can be sitting in front of a TV, we'll watch a show or a movie, and it's with a predominantly white cast, a storyline, and we was like, oh, that was so good. And the first thing we say is,
how come there couldn't have been some Black folks?
Or no, it's like, wow, I wish Black shows were like that. Or like, I wish, you know what I mean? But it's like when we get, sometimes what happens is like we get the Black show and it's so heavy.
It's super dramatic.
And it's like, you wish sometimes it could just be
some human story.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But
we are political bodies. You know what I mean? And it's even, we pull it, and I think we play it on to each other. Because in capitalism, there's a lot of assumption of like what you want, like they're like tagging into people's algorithms and stuff like that. And it's like, I hope that in the comic book world, because in a lot of times in the graphic visual in that world, it's like there's a way to think speculatively and get the things that you need out and go out there. Because like Octavia Butler, perfect example. She didn't do that.
Yeah,
her characters were Black, but she didn't really like outwardly say that. Even in like the even in the book where she's her character is going back in time and she ends up being a slave and stuff like that. Like the circumstances at the lead as opposed to like all this overt messaging and things like that. It's the storyline is more interesting. Right. I think that the comedian, I think Get Out was a really good example. Right. And a successful.
Well, even with Get Out, it was sort of like he took the political end of it and made it horrific.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like
now he's playing with it. He's not like
right.
It's not just there.
It's not telling you to just stay in school. It's just,
it's like twisting it or us. You know.
Yeah.
That was a really good way to do that.
Well, see, that's the thing. By the time you get to us, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of like you can see him. Okay, it's almost like if he was like a hot air balloon, like it was on the ground and get out. And then by the time you get to us, you could see him like, okay, he's moving away from sort of the political messaging a little bit.
So here's another good example. Spike Lee with 25th Hour.
Okay.
Total white cast.
True.
But Spike Lee directed that.
And you could tell it was a Spike Lee story.
Yes, you could.
Right.
And I think he's talking about the Black experience through white characters. And I think that was like a lot of times groundbreaking. This man's about to go into prison. You know what I'm saying? Like he was he was selling drugs. Like he was like, he could have easily put Denzel Washington somewhere sprinkled into that movie somewhere with whoever.
But I think by not casting it with Black folks, it made you appreciate the story a little bit more.
That's the speculative idea of this idea of Blackness, where it's not so. It expands from the skin.
Well, yeah, like a lot of times, even before Miles Morales, as far as Miles Morales Spider-Man,
right?
You can say that the average Black comic book fan identify with Spider-Man because his origin story felt familiar.
Yeah,
right. He was like raised by his aunts. He was poor. He was
except for Batman, he was rich, but Batman he didn't have his parents,
right? Or like even Superman is an orphan. So like even like which has all these other cultural connections with Jewish culture and things like that. But also it definitely we connect to it speculatively as a culture. We identify with that.
Right.
So by the time you actually get to Miles Morales, we've been prepared for this story. So
yeah, we were woven in and embedded in so many different ways and so deep. It's kind of like how James Baldwin during the debate was like, I can't go to Africa and blend in. You know what I mean? They're gonna pick me out really quick.
Right.
Because there's so much European influence, just me. I'm like my blood and bones are all in this soil, in this land. I'm as much indigenous to this land as anybody else.
Right, right.
And it's like, I don't know. Here we are going off into our world, how we do when we talk. I don't know where we are right now, but
we're on the last 5 minutes.
All right.
So last 5 minutes of the conversation. This hour flew by. The main reason I actually brought you on here because we just curated a show at the Toledo Museum of Art.
Yes.
If you can pull that flyer up, thanks, Kyle. It's called Out of the Dark. We basically took pieces that our museum owns.
Yeah.
And we gave our opinion, us and several other artists that belong to the Toledo Black Artists Coalition. And we explained like our connection to particular pieces. I talked about Carol Walker, for instance. So I just want, basically in the 5 minutes that we have left, just encourage everybody to follow the Toledo Black Artists Coalition on Instagram. That's Toledo BAC. Follow my brother Yusuf Lateef at Yusuf A. Lateef on Instagram. What else would you like to share in the last 3 minutes we got here?
I want to say big ups to the Toledo Black Artists Coalition. And they did a stellar job pulling some things together, and also big up to Candace Harrison and Will and Jada over there at Toll House, and big ups to our friends over at the Toledo Museum of Art. And this has all been like a really serious learning experience, and kind of like really intense engagement and kind of like public classroom on how to like do this type of work. And I encourage everybody to, check it out and look at the work and investigate it and do some research into some of the artists that we highlight. And yeah, I think that it was a really great experience. It was good working with you.
Yeah, that was interesting. Oddly enough, we were both artists, but we rarely have worked together on stuff. We did work together on Naima's book.
Yes. You can check that out. That's called Just Worms for Dinner.
Feeding Donald Trump worms.
It's
by my niece, his daughter, Naima Moon. It's a classic.
Yeah. So I just want to and thank you for bringing me on and really in-depth conversation.
That's what we do here, Black Comix Universe.
That's what y'all do, man.
Yep. And for my brother Yusuf Lateef, and for me, Imani Lateef, this is Black Comix Universe, and thanks a lot.